Welcome to your storytelling. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to subscribe. It started small, missed dinners, late nights, and excuses that didn't quite add up. Work is crazy, he'd say, flashing that familiar smile. I wanted to believe him. After 15 years of marriage, trust wasn't something I questioned. But then there were moments I couldn't ignore. Texts he didn't explain, strange credit card charges, and an emotional distance that I could feel but couldn't define. You know that feeling in your gut when something isn't right? I tried to brush it off as paranoia, but deep down, I knew the cracks in our perfect life were more than just my imagination. One evening, while sorting through his gym bag, I froze. A shirt I'd never seen before reeked of perfume, floral and expensive. But the kicker? A faint red lipstick mark on the collar. My heart pounded as I stared at it, unable to move. I tried to convince myself it was mine, but I don't even wear red lipstick. Questions flooded my mind. Who was she? How long had this been going on? I didn't confront him that night. Instead, I stuffed the shirt back into his bag, my hands trembling, and began to silently watch him, looking for answers. I planned to confront him when he came home. My anger boiled over as I rehearsed. Who was she? But when he walked in, smiling like nothing was wrong, I froze. He kissed my forehead, asked about dinner, and went about his night as if everything was normal. I couldn't find the words. Instead, I swallowed my suspicions and started observing him more closely. His phone habits, his expressions when he thought I wasn't looking. The longer I watched, the clearer it became. He wasn't the man I thought I knew, and it terrified me. His phone buzzed at 2 a.m., waking me. He was in the shower, and curiosity got the better of me. The message read, "Miss you already. When can I see you again?" The sender was Anna. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, paralyzed. When he came out of the bathroom, I pretended to be asleep, my heart racing. Who was Anna? What was she to him? That message replayed in my head for hours, over and over. I didn't sleep that night, and by morning, I knew I needed more than just gut feelings to uncover the truth. I hired a private investigator. It felt drastic, almost like something out of a movie, but I needed answers. Within a week, the investigator handed me photos. My husband with another woman, Anna. She was younger, beautiful, and they looked like a couple in love. Worse, there were 2 children in the photos. My hands shook as I flipped through the evidence, my mind unable to process what I was seeing. He wasn't just cheating. He had a second family. How had he hidden this for so long? The man I thought I knew was living a life I couldn't comprehend. I couldn't believe it. 2 children, a woman across town, and a house I'd never seen before. It felt like a bad dream, but the photos were real. My husband, smiling with them, looked like a completely different man, happy, carefree. He never smiled like that at home anymore. I sat there staring at the pictures, numb. How could someone live a double life like this? I wondered if he loved her more, if he loved me at all. That night, I sat in silence, the photos spread out on the table, my mind spinning with questions I wasn't ready to ask. I waited for him to come home, the photos tucked in my lap. When he walked in, I didn't wait. "Who is Anna?" I asked, holding up a picture. His face drained of color, and he froze. For a moment, he didn't even try to deny it. "I can explain," he muttered, sitting down. "Explain? How do you explain a second family?" He told me it started as a mistake, but he never intended to hurt me. His words felt hollow, rehearsed. I wanted to scream, but I just sat there, stunned. My life was unraveling right in front of me. He admitted everything, or at least what he wanted me to know. He met Anna years ago, right after our daughter was born. It was harmless at first, just a distraction, he said. But then things escalated. He fell in love with her. Love. The word felt like a dagger. For years, he had been splitting his time between us, feeding us both lies. Every business trip, every late night, was a visit to her. And the worst part? He said he didn't want to choose. He wanted both lives. I realized I had married a man I didn't even know. When I started digging into our finances, I felt sick. He wasn't just lying about his time. He was lying about our money, too. Thousands of dollars were missing from our savings. He'd been sending money to Anna, paying for her house, her car, and their children's school fees. I found withdrawals from our daughter's college fund, money I had carefully saved for years. It was all gone, spent on his secret life. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. He didn't just cheat on me emotionally. He had stolen from our family, jeopardizing everything we had built together. But it got worse. Hidden in his emails, I found messages between him and Anna. They were making plans, my husband and her, building a future together. He wanted to leave me, to start fresh with her and their kids. I realized he wasn't staying out of love for me or loyalty to our family. He was staying until it was convenient for him to leave. He was using me as a safety net while he planned his escape. My anger turned into something sharper, darker. I wasn't just a betrayed wife. I was his backup plan, and that broke me. I couldn't think straight. My mind replayed everything, every lie, every fake smile, every I love you he'd ever said. I didn't eat for days. I couldn't sleep, haunted by images of him with Anna, laughing with their children. The life he built with her wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. I wanted answers, but more than that, I wanted to scream, cry, and destroy something, anything, to release the anger boiling inside me. How could I have been so blind? How could the man I shared my life with, trusted completely, betray me so deeply? My world was crumbling. I had to see her. I didn't know why, but I needed to face the woman who had stolen my husband. I found her address, the house he paid for, and drove there one evening. When she opened the door, she looked shocked but not defensive. "I'm his wife," I said bluntly. Her face paled. She invited me in, and for a moment, I saw the cracks in her life too. She wasn't the villain I expected. She had no idea he was still married. She thought he was divorced. She was as much a victim of his lies as I was. Anna told me everything. She met him years ago at a conference. He charmed her, just like he had me once. She thought he was single, and when he eventually admitted he was married, he claimed we were separated and on the verge of divorce. He'd promised her a future, a life where they'd be together openly. She even showed me texts and emails to prove it. As I listened to her story, I felt a strange sense of kinship. We were two women betrayed by the same man, both caught in his tangled web of lies and deceit. A man, both caught in his tangled web of lies and deceit. What shattered me most was meeting her children. They looked so much like him. His eyes, his smile. My chest tightened as I watched them playing in the living room, blissfully unaware of the chaos surrounding them. They were innocent in all of this, just like my own daughter. I couldn't hate them. I couldn't even hate Anna. The only person I could hate was him. He had built 2 lives, 2 families, without considering the destruction it would cause. I left her house that day feeling empty, as though the betrayal had somehow grown heavier with each revelation. That night, I confronted him again, this time armed with Anna's story. I told him I had spoken to her, that I knew everything. He didn't deny it. Instead, he begged for forgiveness, claiming he never wanted to hurt me. Hurt me? He had shattered me. I told him Anna wanted nothing more to do with him, and for the first time, I saw panic in his eyes. He tried to defend himself, saying he'd made mistakes but still loved me. But his words felt meaningless. He didn't love anyone but himself. I was done listening to his excuses. I wasted no time. The next morning, I met with a lawyer. I wanted a divorce, full custody of our daughter, and every penny that was rightfully mine. I couldn't let him manipulate me anymore. When I served him the papers, he looked stunned. "You don't have to do this," he pleaded. But I did. He tried to guilt me, saying a divorce would ruin him. I didn't care. I was done sacrificing my peace for his lies. For the first time in years, I felt in control, even though the road ahead terrified me. I was ready to fight. Word spread quickly among friends and family. Everyone wanted to know what happened, but I couldn't bear to relive it over and over. Some were shocked, others supportive, and a few had suspected something all along but said nothing. That stung the most. The man I had defended and loved was now exposed for who he truly was. He tried to spin the story, making himself the victim, but the truth was undeniable. I stayed quiet, letting the evidence speak for itself. His perfect facade was crumbling, and I wasn't about to save him from the wreckage. Explaining everything to my daughter was the hardest part. She was old enough to understand, But how do you tell a child their father has betrayed them too? I tried to shield her from the worst of it, but she wasn't blind to the tension. Why is Dad never home anymore? She asked one night. I told her the truth, as gently as I could, about the lies, the second family, and the divorce. Her tears broke me. She looked at me with wide, questioning eyes, asking, "Why doesn't he love us enough?" I had no answer, only hugs and tears. As the divorce proceedings moved forward, his desperation grew. He started showing up unannounced, pleading for another chance. "I'll fix everything," he said. "I'll leave Anna and focus on us." His words felt hollow, like echoes of promises he'd already broken. He even tried using our daughter, showing up at her school and begging her to convince me to forgive him. It was cruel, manipulative, and further proof that I made the right decision. Each time I saw him, I grew stronger. I wasn't the same woman he had fooled for years. I was done being his victim. Amid the chaos, I began to find myself again. I started therapy, focused on my daughter, and leaned on the support of friends I had neglected during my marriage. For the first time in years, I felt free, not from his lies, but from the weight of carrying a marriage that was never what I thought it was. I realized I had been living in his shadow, dimming my own light to make him shine. Now, I was rebuilding, brick by brick, a life that was entirely my own. The pain lingered, but so did a sense of hope for the future. Anna contacted me again. She wanted to share something she had discovered after I told her about my divorce. She sent me screenshots of messages my husband had sent to another woman. Yes, another. It was like a nightmare that wouldn't end. He hadn't just been lying to me and Anna. He was juggling even more lives. How could one person be so heartless? It was clear now. His deceit wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. It was who he was. I felt anger bubbling inside me, not just for what he did to me, but to all of us. His web of lies finally caught up with him. Anna cut ties, the other woman exposed him, and his reputation crumbled. At work, whispers turned into formal complaints, and he lost his job. He was no longer the charismatic man everyone admired. He was a fraud. He called me, crying, begging for help. "I have nothing left," he said. Part of me wanted to laugh at his desperation, but I didn't. I simply told him, "You made your choices. Now live with them." Hanging up the phone, I felt a strange sense of closure. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of him. The divorce was finalized. I got the house, full custody of our daughter, and a sense of justice I didn't think I'd find. Financially, it was tight. He had drained so much of our savings, but I was determined to rebuild. I took on more hours at work, started budgeting every penny, and slowly created a new routine for my daughter and me. She was my anchor, the reason I kept going on the hardest days. We began to smile again, laugh again. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was ours, and for that, I was grateful. As the dust settled, I started reflecting on myself. How had I let this go on for so long? Why didn't I see the signs? Therapy helped me understand that his betrayal wasn't my fault, but it also taught me to trust my instincts again. I realized how much of myself I had given up for him. My dreams, my confidence, my independence. I vowed never to lose myself like that again. It was painful to look back, but necessary. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the beginning of a stronger, more self-assured version of me. Months turned into a year, and life started to feel normal again. Different, but peaceful. I reconnected with old friends, picked up hobbies I had abandoned, and even started dating cautiously. But this time, I was different. I wasn't looking for someone to complete me. I was already whole. My daughter and I built a bond stronger than ever, and we created a home filled with love and honesty. The scars of his betrayal were still there, but they didn't define me anymore. I had survived the storm, and now I was standing in the sunlight, ready to embrace whatever came next. Out of nowhere, he showed up at my door one evening, looking disheveled and defeated. He said he'd been in therapy, trying to change, trying to be a better man. "I want to make things right," he said. I stared at him, almost feeling sorry for how far he'd fallen. But then I remembered the pain he caused, the lies, the destruction. I told him it was too late. "You can't fix what you broke," I said firmly. His shoulders slumped, and he left, realizing I was no longer the woman he could manipulate. That chapter of my life was closed. One day, I received a letter from Anna. She wrote to thank me for confronting her and sharing the truth. She said it gave her the courage to rebuild her life too. She had found a job, moved to a smaller house, and was raising her kids on her own terms. Her words brought unexpected comfort. It was strange, finding solidarity in someone I once considered an enemy. In the end, we weren't so different, just two women who refused to let his lies define our futures. Her letter was a reminder that strength can grow from the most painful places. One quiet evening, my daughter and I sat on the couch, flipping through old photo albums. She pointed to a picture of us as a family, taken years ago. "Do you miss him?" she asked softly. I paused, thinking carefully. "I miss the man I thought he was," I admitted. "But I don't miss the lies." She nodded, her young mind processing it all. "I'm glad we have each other," she said, hugging me tightly. Her words filled me with warmth. We had lost so much, but what we gained, honesty, love, and resilience, was worth more than anything he could have given us. I threw myself into projects that brought me joy. I started painting again, something I hadn't done in years. I volunteered at a local shelter, made new friends, and even planned a trip abroad, a dream I'd shelved long ago. Each step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself he had stolen. I realized I didn't need closure from him or anyone else. My closure came from within, from knowing I had survived and thrived despite it all. For the first time in years, I felt free, not just from him, but from the version of me that allowed his lies to fester. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. The pain he caused would always be a part of my story, but it no longer defined me. I had learned to trust myself again, to protect my peace, and to find joy in the small moments. Watching my daughter grow into a strong, confident young woman reminded me of why I fought so hard to move forward. One evening, as we sat on the porch laughing about something silly, I realized how far we'd come. The storm was behind us now, and the future stretched ahead, bright and full of possibilities.